The small research ship Helena's Dream moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Dr. Amanda Rivers looked at her screen and sighed. They had been searching for mineral deposits for 3 weeks now and found nothing useful. Rim territories were supposed to be rich with rare metals, but so far they had only found empty rocks floating in space. Jake Morrison, their pilot, stretched in his chair and yawned. He was a good pilot but got bored easily when there was no action. Lisa Grant, who handled all their communications, was reading a book on her tablet. The crew of 3 had worked together for 2 years, and they knew each other well. Another dead system, Amanda said, looking at the data from their latest scan. Nothing here but old asteroids and space dust. Jake turned around in his pilot seat. Hey Doc, what about that signal we picked up earlier? The one from Sector 7? Amanda frowned. That was just background noise, probably from some old satellite. Don't think so, Jake said. Lisa, can you pull up that recording again? Lisa looked up from her book and pressed some buttons on her control panel. A strange sound filled the ship's bridge. It was weak and full of static, but there was definitely a pattern to it. That's not random noise, Lisa said. It's repeating. Every 43 seconds, someone or something is sending this signal. Amanda felt a chill run down her back. They were far from any human colonies out here. The nearest Earth ship was probably hundreds of light years away. If this signal wasn't human, then what was it? Can you trace where it's coming from? Amanda asked. Lisa worked on her computers. For several minutes, it's coming from the 4th planet in this system. But our scan showed that planet was dead. No atmosphere, no life signs. Jake was already starting to turn the ship toward the planet. Well, something is down there sending that signal. And it might be in trouble. Wait, Amanda said. We should report this to Earth Command first. If there's alien technology involved, we need proper backup. Come on, Doc, Jake said with a grin. By the time we send a message to Earth and wait for orders, whoever is sending that signal might be dead. We're just going to take a quick look. Amanda knew Jake was right, but she still felt nervous. They were just a small research team. They weren't equipped to handle first contact with alien species. But the signal did sound like a distress call, and she couldn't ignore someone who might need help. Fine, she said. But we stay in the ship unless we're absolutely sure it's safe. The Helena's Dream approached the dead planet slowly. As they got closer, their sensors picked up something unexpected. There was a large metal object on the surface, partially buried in rock and sand. It was definitely not natural. That's a ship, Jake said, staring at the screen. And it's huge, at least 10 times bigger than ours. The alien ship was a twisted mess of dark metal and strange curves. It looked like it had crashed hard and been sitting there for a long time. Parts of it were broken open, and they could see into the dark interior. The distress signals coming from inside that wreck, Lisa reported. But I'm not picking up any life signs. Maybe their life signs are different from ours, Amanda suggested. We won't know until we get closer. Jake landed their ship about 100 meters from the alien wreck. Even through their ship's thick walls, they could feel how cold and dead. This planet was... The air outside was too thin to breathe, and the temperature was far below freezing. We'll need full environmental suits, Amanda said, and we stay together at all times. The 3 crew members put on their heavy spacesuits and checked all their equipment. Jake carried a portable scanner, while Lisa brought recording devices. Amanda took the medical kit, just in case they found survivors. The alien ship was even more impressive up close. The metal was black and seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols were carved into the hull, but they didn't look like any writing. The system Amanda had ever seen. There's an opening here, Jake called out, pointing to a large hole in the ship's side. They climbed through the opening and found themselves in a long corridor. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air inside the ship was breathable, but it smelled wrong, like chemicals in decay. The signal is stronger now, Lisa whispered. It's coming from deeper in the ship. They moved carefully through the dark corridors. Amanda noticed that everything seemed designed for beings much larger than humans. The doorways were tall and wide, and the ceiling was at least 3 meters high. As they went deeper into the ship, they started finding rooms that made Amanda's stomach turn. These looked like laboratories, but not the clean, scientific kind she was used to. The tables had straps and chains on them. Strange instruments hung from the walls, many of them stained with what looked like dried blood. What kind of experiments were they doing here? Jake asked quietly. Before Amanda could answer, they heard a weak sound from somewhere ahead. Almost human, like someone calling for help. They hurried toward the sound and found a row of small rooms with thick metal doors. Each door had a small window, and most of the rooms were empty. But in the last room, they saw something that made them all stop in shock. A young human woman was lying on the floor of the cell. She was alive, but barely. Clothes were torn and dirty, and she had obvious injuries all over her body. When she saw them through the window, she tried to sit up but was too weak. "Oh my God," Amanda whispered. "She's human." Jake was all ready. Working on the lock of the cell door took him several minutes, but finally the door opened with a loud click. Amanda rushed into the cell and knelt beside the woman. She was young, maybe 20 years old, with brown hair and blue eyes. Those eyes held a terror that Amanda had never seen before. "It's okay," Amanda said softly. "We're here to help you. You're safe now." The woman looked at them with confusion and fear. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she managed to speak. "Name is Megan Clark," she said. "I was on the colony ship New Haven. We were going to establish a new settlement, but they took us. They took all of us." Amanda's heart sank. The New Haven had disappeared 6 months ago while traveling to a distant star system. Earth Command had sent search teams, but they never found any trace of the ship or its 3,000 passengers. "Where are the others?" Amanda asked gently. Megan's eyes filled with tears. "They're gone, all gone. The harvesters took them one by one. They experimented on us, studied us. They wanted to know how much pain we could feel before we died." "Harvesters?" Jake asked. Megan nodded weakly. "That's what they called themselves. They collect intelligent species from across the galaxy, study us like we're insects. They don't see us as people, just as specimens for their research." Amanda helped Megan sit up and gave her some water from her emergency kit. "How did you survive when the others didn't?" "I don't know," Megan said. "Maybe because I'm younger, or maybe I was just lucky. But I heard them talking. Earth is next. They're planning to harvest your entire planet." The 3 crew members looked at each other in horror. As an alien species that treated humans like laboratory animals was planning to attack Earth, and they were the only ones who knew about it. "We need to get you back to our ship," Amanda said. "And we need to send a message to Earth Command immediately." As they helped Megan to her feet, she grabbed Amanda's arm with surprising strength. "You have to warn them," she said urgently. "The harvesters are coming, and your people aren't ready for what they'll do to them." Admiral Helen Carter sat in her office at Earth Command headquarters, staring at the video message that had arrived 3 hours ago. She had watched it 12 times now, and each viewing made her feel more sick to her stomach as a young woman. On the screen, Megan Clark looked broken and terrified as she described what the aliens had done to her and thousands of other humans. The message from Dr. Amanda Rivers and her crew was clear. An alien species called the Harvesters was coming. To Earth, they treated intelligent beings like animals in a laboratory. They tortured and killed for research purposes. And they had already marked humanity for collection. Admiral Carter pressed the button on her desk. "Get me General Newman immediately. Call an emergency meeting of the War Council. We have a situation." Within an hour, the most important military leaders on Earth were gathered in the secure conference room deep beneath the Pentagon. General Paul Newman, a tough man with gray hair and serious eyes, looked around the table at his colleagues. Admiral Carter had already briefed them on the situation, but the reality was hard to accept. "How long do we have?" asked General Lisa Martinez, head of the Space Defense Force. "The alien ship's computers suggest the main harvester fleet is about 6 months away from Earth." Admiral Carter replied, "Maybe less if they have faster ships than we think." 6 months, General Newman said quietly. "That's not enough time to build a proper defense fleet. We have maybe 200 combat ships in the entire system. These aliens can destroy A colony ship with 3,000 people without anyone even knowing. Our current forces won't be enough. The room fell silent. Everyone knew Newman was right. Earth's military was designed to keep peace between human colonies and deal with pirates, or rebels. They had never faced an alien invasion, especially not from a species that seemed to be much more advanced than humans. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of the cryogenic military program, had been quiet during the discussion. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Now she cleared her throat and spoke. "There might be another option," she said carefully. "Project Lazarus." The room became even quieter. Everyone had heard of Project Lazarus, but most thought it was just a rumor or a legend from the old days. "Lena," Admiral Carter said slowly, "please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting." Dr. Rodriguez opened a file on her tablet and placed it on the table where everyone could see. 50 years ago, after the Third World War nearly destroyed our civilization, the government created a backup plan. They took 10,000 of the best soldiers from that war and put them in cryogenic sleep. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Were the ones who survived the worst fighting humanity had ever seen. She pressed a button, and pictures appeared on the screen. Men and women in military uniforms, all with the hard look of people who had seen too much combat. They volunteered for the program, Dr. Rodriguez continued. Each one knew they might never wake up. But they also knew that someday humanity might face a threat that normal soldiers couldn't handle. They agreed to sleep until that day came. General Martinez shook her head. "Those soldiers are from a different time. The Third World War was brutal. Those people fought with methods we don't use anymore. They might not fit into our modern military." "That might be exactly what we need," General Newman said thoughtfully. "These harvesters seem to think they understand how humans fight, but they've probably never encountered the kind of soldiers we produced during the war. Those men and women knew how to win at any cost." Dr. Rodriguez nodded. The program was led by Colonel Ryan Bishop. He was a legend even during the war. His unit never lost a battle, no matter how impossible the odds were. If anyone can figure out how to fight these aliens, it's him. "But is it right?" asked Dr. Martin Hughes, the Council's ethics advisor. "We're talking about waking up soldiers from 50 years ago. They'll wake up in a world they don't recognize, surrounded by people they don't know. And we're asking them to fight a war that might get them all killed." Admiral Carter looked around the table at each person. "Dr. Hughes raises a good point, but we have to ask ourselves a harder question. What happens to humanity if we don't wake them up? These harvesters don't want to conquer us or make us slaves. They want to study us while we're alive and in pain. They want to turn our entire planet into a laboratory." She stood up and walked to the window that showed the city outside. Millions of people were going about their normal lives, not knowing that in 6 months they might all be dead or worse. "I've made my decision," she said. "We're going to activate Project Lazarus." "Dr. Rodriguez, how long will it take to wake up the soldiers?" "The revival process takes about 2 weeks for each group," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "We have them stored in 10 different locations around the world. We can start the process immediately and have the first group awake within days." "Do what Admiral Carter ordered. Start with Colonel Bishop's group and prepare briefing materials. These soldiers are going to wake up 50 years in the future. They'll need to understand what's happened to the world and what we're asking them to do." As the meeting ended and people began to leave, General Newman approached Admiral Carter. Eleni said quietly, "Are you sure about this? Once we wake those soldiers up, there's no going back. They're not like our current military. From a time when war meant something different." Admiral Carter looked at him with tired eyes. "Paul, I've read the reports from that alien ship. I've seen what the harvesters do to their prisoners. If we don't do something dramatic, every human being on this planet is going to end up like Megan Clark or worse. At least this way we have a chance." 3 days later, in a secret facility, beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Rodriguez stood in front of a massive cryogenic chamber. Inside, she could see the sleeping form of Colonel Ryan Bishop. Tubes and wires connected his body to the life support systems that had kept him alive for 50 years. "Begin the revival process," she told her team of technicians. Slowly, the chamber began to warm up. Machines started pumping drugs into Bishop's body to restart his natural functions. His heart monitor showed a weak but steady beat. After 50 years of dreamless sleep, Colonel Ryan Bishop was coming back to life. Dr. Rodriguez wondered what kind of man would wake up from that chamber. The reports said he was brilliant and completely dedicated to protecting humanity. They also said he was capable of terrible violence when necessary. The world he was waking up to was very different from the one he had left behind, as Bishop's eyes began to flutter open. Dr. Rodriguez hoped they had made the right choice. Earth needed heroes, but she wasn't sure if the sleeping soldiers were. Heroes, or something else entirely. In a few hours, she would find out. The first of humanity's sleeping guardians was about to wake up, and nothing would ever be the same. Colonel Ryan Bishop opened his eyes slowly. The bright lights above him hurt, and his mouth felt dry as sand. He tried to move, but his muscles were weak and stiff. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was signing papers in a government office, and then lying down in a metal chamber. "Colonel Bishop, can you hear me?" A woman's voice asked from somewhere nearby. Bishop turned his head and saw a small woman in a white coat standing beside his bed. She had kind eyes but looked worried. Behind her were several people in military uniforms he didn't recognize. "Where? AM1?" Bishop asked. His voice came out as a rough whisper. "You're in a medical facility in Colorado," the woman said. "My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez. You've been in cryogenic sleep for 50 years. Do you remember volunteering for Project Lazarus?" The memories came back slowly. The Third World War had ended, but the world was still dangerous. The government had asked for volunteers to sleep until humanity needed them again. Bishop had volunteered. Because he believed in protecting people, even if it meant giving up his normal life. 50 years, he said quietly. "What year is it?" "It's 2225, Dr. Rodriguez replied. "The world has changed a lot since you went to sleep. We've colonized other planets and made contact with alien species. But now we face a threat unlike anything humanity has ever seen." Over the next few hours, Dr. Rodriguez explained the situation. She told him about the harvesters, about Megan Clark, and about the alien fleet heading toward Earth. Bishop listened carefully, asking questions when he needed to understand something better. "How many of my people did you wake up?" he asked. "We've started the revival process for your entire unit," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Sergeant Major Lisa Kane, Captain Alex Turner, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Williams, and about 500 others. They should all be awake within the week." Bishop nodded. These were good soldiers, people he had fought beside during the worst battles of the war. If anyone could adapt to this new threat, they could. "I want to see the intelligence reports on these harvesters," Bishop said. "And I want to meet the girl who survived their experiments." 2 days later, Bishop was strong enough to walk around the facility. His body was still adjusting to being awake, but years of military training had taught him to push through discomfort. He met with his awakened soldiers in a large conference room. Sergeant Major Lisa Kane looked the same as she had 50 years ago, thanks to the cryogenic process. She was a tough woman who specialized in explosives and demolition. Captain Alex Turner was a tactical genius who could see patterns in battle that others missed. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Williams understood technology better than anyone Bishop had ever met. "It's good to see you all again," Bishop said to his team. "I know this situation is strange for all of us. We went to sleep in one world and woke up in another. But our mission hasn't changed. We're here to protect humanity." "Sir," Kane said, "we've been reading the reports about these aliens. Don't fight like any enemy we've faced before. Their ships change and adapt during battle. How do we fight something that learns from every attack?" "We do what we've always done," Bishop replied. "We adapt faster than they do. And we use the one advantage they won't expect." "What's that?" Turner asked. "They think they understand humans because they've studied us. But they've only studied peaceful colonists and researchers. They've never met soldiers like us." Later that day, Bishop was taken to meet Megan Clark. She was in a hospital room, still recovering from her ordeal. When she saw Bishop, she seemed frightened at first. He was a large man with scars on his face and hands, and his eyes held the look of someone who had seen too much violence. Miss Clark, Bishop said gently, sitting down in a chair beside her bed. I'm Colonel Bishop. I'm here to help stop the people who hurt you. Megan looked at him carefully. You're one of the frozen soldiers, aren't you? The ones they woke up to fight the harvesters. Yes, Bishop said. I need you to tell me everything you remember about them. How they think, how they act, what they're... Afraid of Megan was quiet for a long moment, then she began to speak. They don't see us as people, she said. To them, we're just interesting animals. They want to know how we work, what makes us afraid, how much pain we can feel. They study our reactions like scientists studying insects. Do they have any weaknesses? Bishop asked. They're very confident, Megan said. They think they're superior to every other species in the galaxy. They've never met anyone who could really fight back. Most species just surrender or run away when the harvesters come. Bishop nodded. That might be useful. What about their technology? Their ships are alive somehow, Megan said with a shiver. They grow and change. But I think that might also be a weakness. Living things can be hurt or killed if you know how. After his meeting with Megan, Bishop met with Admiral Carter and the other Earth military leaders. The modern officers seemed uncomfortable around him and his soldiers. They clearly thought the awakened troops were too violent and unpredictable for modern warfare. Colonel Admiral Carter said, "We appreciate your willingness to help, but our military has evolved since your time. We use precision strikes and careful planning. We try to minimize casualties and avoid unnecessary destruction." That's admirable, Bishop replied, but it won't work against the harvesters. They don't care about your rules of war. They don't. Negotiate or show mercy. They're coming here to turn every human being into a laboratory specimen. General Newman, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. What do you suggest? We need to train your soldiers to fight like us, Bishop said. Not just with weapons and tactics, but with the right mindset. The harvesters think they know what humans are capable of. We need to show them they're wrong. Over the following weeks, Bishop and his awakened soldiers began training Earth's modern military. It was difficult at first. The current soldiers were used to following strict rules and procedures. Bishop's people fought with instinct and aggression that made their instructors nervous. You think too much, Kane told a group of young soldiers during a combat exercise. When someone is trying to kill you, you don't have time to follow a manual. You have to react and adapt. The modern soldiers struggled with this approach. They had been trained to be professional and controlled. The awakened soldiers fought like wild animals when necessary, using any method that would help them win. They're from a different era, Captain Betty Foster told her commander after a particularly intense training session. They fight like the war never ended. But slowly, the two groups began to learn from each other. The modern soldiers taught the awakened troops about new technology and weapons. The old soldiers taught the new ones about survival and fighting without rules. Bishop spent his time studying the harvester intelligence and developing new strategies. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could match their adaptability. But humans had one advantage that no other species possessed. Something that had helped them survive since the beginning of time. Humans could be completely unpredictable when they needed to be. They could throw away logic and embrace chaos if it meant protecting their people. The harvesters studied fear and pain. They had never encountered a species that could turn those emotions into weapons. As the enemy fleet grew closer to Earth, Bishop knew that the real test was coming. His soldiers were ready, and the modern military was learning to fight with the intensity they would need. But he also knew that many of them would not survive the coming battle. That night, as he looked up at the stars where the enemy was approaching, Bishop made a promise to himself and to humanity. The harvesters thought they were coming to collect specimens for their experiments. Instead, they were going to discover what happened when humans had nothing left to lose. The alarm bells rang throughout Titan Base as the first harvester ships appeared on the long-range sensors. Captain Danny Foster ran to the command center, his heart racing. He had never seen ships like these before. They looked more like giant sea creatures than spacecraft, with dark surfaces that seemed to move and shift even in the vacuum of space. How many? Foster asked his sensor operator. 12 large vessels, sir, the young officer replied. But they're changing shape as we watch. Our computers can't get a solid reading on their weapons or defenses. Foster looked at the tactical. Display Titan Base was home to 50,000 colonists, mostly families and researchers. They had some defensive weapons, but nothing designed to fight a real military force. Send out the alert to all Earth defense ships in the area, Foster ordered, and get me a direct line to Admiral Carter. Within an hour, 6 Earth Defense Force ships had arrived to help defend Titan Base. Foster felt a little better seeing the reinforcements, but he was still worried. The Harvester ships were unlike anything in their military manuals. The attack came without any warning or attempt to communicate. The alien ships simply opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend space itself. The first Earth ship, the cruiser Liberty, exploded in a flash of blue light. Turn fire. Foster shouted. The Earth ships launched missiles and fired their energy weapons at the Harvester vessels. But something strange happened. As soon as the weapons hit the alien ships, the ships began to change. Their holes grew thicker where the missiles had struck. New weapons appeared on their surfaces. They're adapting to our attacks, Foster's tactical officer said in amazement. Every time we hit them, they get stronger. Within minutes, 3 more Earth ships were destroyed. The Harvesters seemed to learn from each attack, developing better defenses and more powerful weapons. Foster realized with horror that conventional tactics would never work against these aliens. Just then, a new ship appeared on the sensors. It was the experimental warship Defiance, commanded by Colonel Bishop and his awakened soldiers. The ship looked different from other Earth vessels. It had been built using a mix of modern technology and older, simpler systems that the Harvesters couldn't easily understand or counter. "This is Colonel Bishop to all Earth forces," came a voice over the radio. "Fall back and let us engage the enemy. We're going to try something they won't expect." Foster watched in amazement as the Defiance flew straight at the largest Harvester ship. Instead of firing weapons from a safe distance, Bishop's ship rammed directly into the alien vessel. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but the Defiance had been specially reinforced for this kind of attack. "All teams prepare for boarding action." Bishop's voice came over the radio. Foster couldn't believe what he was seeing. The awakened soldiers were actually going to board the alien ship and fight the Harvesters hand to hand. It seemed like suicide, but Bishop and his people acted like this was a normal battle plan. Sergeant Major Kane led the first boarding party through the hole their ship had made in the Harvester vessel. She carried explosives and simple weapons that the aliens wouldn't be able to predict or counter. Behind her came 20 other awakened soldiers, all ready for close combat. The inside of the Harvester ship was a nightmare. The walls seemed alive, pulsing like the inside of a giant animal. Strange creatures that looked like a mix of machine and biology moved through the corridors. But Kane and her soldiers didn't hesitate. They had fought in worse places during the war. "Plant the charges on anything that looks important," Kane ordered her team. As they moved deeper into the ship, they discovered the true horror of what the Harvesters were doing. Large rooms filled with cages held prisoners from many different alien species. But worse were the laboratories, where the Harvesters conducted their experiments. Kane found a room full of colonists from Titan Base who had been captured during the first wave of the attack. They were strapped to tables with strange devices attached to their heads. The aliens were studying their fear responses while they were still conscious. "Get them out of here," Kane told her soldiers. "Make sure these monsters pay for what they've done." The rescue became a brutal fight as more Harvester creatures appeared to stop the humans. But the awakened soldiers fought with a fury that the aliens had never encountered before. They used knives, explosives, and even their bare hands when necessary. Captain Turner, meanwhile, had developed a new strategy for the space battle outside. Instead of trying to outfight the adapting alien ships, he began using completely random attack patterns. His ships would fire a few shots, then retreat, then attack from a different angle with different weapons. "Chaos theory, warfare," Turner called it over the radio. "Don't give them time to adapt. Keep changing everything we do." The strategy worked better than expected. The Harvester ships, which had been designed to learn and counter-organize military tactics, couldn't handle completely unpredictable attacks. Their adaptation systems became confused when faced with human behavior that made no logical sense. Lieutenant Commander Williams took charge of the technical assault. Using equipment she had designed based on captured harvester technology, she began attacking the aliens' computer systems. But instead of using sophisticated cyber warfare, she flooded their networks with simple, chaotic data that overloaded their processing systems. These things think like computers, Williams explained to her team. But humans don't always think logically. We can use that against them. Inside the harvester ship, Kane's team had planted explosives throughout the vessel. But they also discovered something that would change everything. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was actually a living creature that had been modified with technology. And like any living thing, it could feel pain. "Fall back to the boarding ships," Kane ordered. "This whole thing is about to come apart." The explosions tore through the harvester vessel from the inside, but more importantly, the pain and shock of the attack spread through the alien fleet's shared consciousness. For the first time in their history, the harvesters experienced something they had only inflicted on others: true suffering. The other harvester ships began to retreat, their formations breaking apart as their shared mind tried to process what had happened. They'd come to Titan Base, expecting to face another weak species that would surrender quickly. Instead, they had met humans who fought with a savage determination they had never encountered. The battle was won, but at a terrible cost. Half of the awakened soldiers who had boarded the harvester ship were dead or badly wounded. 3 more Earth defense ships had been destroyed, and thousands of colonists had been killed or taken during the initial attack. Colonel Bishop stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the burning wreckage of the alien ships. This had been just the advance force. The main harvester fleet was still coming, and it would be much larger and more prepared. "We hurt them," Captain Turner said, standing beside his commander, "but they'll learn from this battle. Next time, they'll be ready for our tactics." Bishop nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to become something even they can't prepare for. They think they've seen what humans are capable of, but they haven't seen anything yet." As rescue ships moved among the wreckage to look for survivors, Bishop began planning for the real war that was coming. The harvesters had made a mistake when they tortured human beings. They had awakened something in humanity that even the sleeping soldiers hadn't fully understood. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after the battle at Titan Base, Colonel Bishop stood in the war room at Earth Command, staring at the holographic display showing the approaching harvester fleet. The main force was massive, hundreds of ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The aliens had learned from their defeat and were coming prepared for a real war. "Our intelligence suggests they'll reach Earth in 2 weeks, Admiral Carter said grimly. "Our entire fleet can't stop a force that size. Even with everything we've learned about fighting them, we're still outnumbered 50 to 1. Bishop studied the display carefully. Harvesters were following exactly the pattern he had expected. They thought they understood humans now, believed. They could counter the tactics that had worked at Titan Base, but they were about to learn. They had only seen a small sample of what humanity could become. Admiral Bishop said slowly, "I need you to authorize the most difficult order you've ever given. We need to evacuate all civilians from Earth." The room fell silent. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been studying casualty reports from the previous battle, looked up in shock. "Evacuate the entire planet?" she asked. "That's over 10 billion people. It would take months, and we don't have months." "We don't need to evacuate everyone," Bishop explained. "It's just the people who can't fight. Children, elderly, anyone who isn't willing to become a soldier. The ones who stay behind need to understand what we're asking of them." General Newman frowned. "What exactly are you suggesting, Colonel?" Bishop turned away from the display and looked at each person in the room. "The harvesters think they've figured out human nature. They believe we're just another species that will break under enough pressure. They don't understand that humans have a capacity for violence that goes beyond anything they've encountered." "You want to turn Earth into a battlefield, Admiral?" Carter said quietly. "I want to turn Earth into a trap," Bishop replied. "The harvesters expect us to defend our planet conventionally. Instead, we're going to let them land and then show them what happens when you threaten human children." The next 10 days, the most massive evacuation in human history took place. Civilian transport ships carried millions of people to colony worlds and space stations far from Earth. But many people chose to stay behind. They volunteered to undergo the same psychological conditioning that the awakened soldiers had received. Decades ago, Megan Clark, now recovered enough to walk and think clearly, volunteered to help train the remaining civilians. Her experience with the harvesters made her uniquely qualified to prepare people for what was coming. "They'll try to break your mind before they break your body," she told groups of volunteers. "But if you can hold on to your anger, if you can, remember why you're fighting, you can survive anything they do to you." The volunteers included teachers, farmers, factory workers, and shop owners. None of them were professional soldiers, but all of them had one thing in common. They refused to let the aliens hurt their families and friends. Lieutenant Commander Williams worked with Earth's best scientists to prepare special surprises for the invaders. They hid weapons and communication devices throughout every major city. More importantly, they booby-trapped captured harvester technology to work against its creators. "Their own biotechnology will turn against them," Williams explained to Bishop. "We've learned how to make their living ships sick, how to confuse their shared consciousness with false information." When the harvester fleet finally arrived at Earth, they found a planet that appeared to have surrendered. The orbital defenses were powered down, and the major cities showed no signs of military activity, satisfied that the humans had given up. The aliens began landing operations to establish their harvesting facilities. The first harvester ships landed in New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other major cities. The aliens expected to find frightened civilians hiding in their homes. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. The trap was sprung when the harvesters attempted their first large-scale capture operation. As alien soldiers moved through the seemingly deserted city streets, humans emerged from sewers, basements, and hidden bunkers. But these weren't the same humans the aliens had studied before. Every person who had stayed on Earth had been trained by the awakened soldiers. They fought with the same brutal efficiency that had won the war 50 years ago. More importantly, they fought with the desperate fury of people protecting their homes and families. The harvesters quickly discovered that their psychological warfare tactics didn't work on humans who had already accepted that they might die. The aliens tried to break their prisoners with pain and fear, but the humans had learned to use their own suffering as a weapon. Sergeant Major Kane led a group of civilian volunteers in an assault on a harvester command center in Chicago. The attack was supposed to be a suicide mission. Kane's people fought with such ferocity that they actually captured the facility intact. "These aren't the same humans we studied before," one captured harvester creature said through a translation device. "It becomes something else, something we don't understand." The aliens shared consciousness, which had always been their greatest. Strength became a weakness when faced with human unpredictability. Every time the harvesters tried to adapt to human tactics, the humans changed their approach completely. Captain Turner coordinated the global resistance from a hidden command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. His strategy was simple: never let the aliens establish a pattern. Every attack was different. Every defense was unexpected. The turning point came when Williams succeeded in hacking into the harvester fleet's bioneural network, using a combination of captured alien technology and human computer viruses. She introduced chaos directly into their shared consciousness. They can't handle the concept of a species that embraces its own capacity for controlled madness. Williams reported to Bishop, "Their collective mind is rejecting the data because it doesn't fit their understanding of how intelligent life should behave." The final battle took place in Earth's orbit as Bishop led a fleet of hybrid human harvester ships against the alien mothership. The vessels had been rebuilt using captured biotechnology. But with human innovations that made them completely unpredictable, the harvesters found themselves fighting ships that seemed to ignore their own damage, piloted by humans who treated certain death as just another tactical option. Bishop's flagship rammed directly into the mothership's control center, an act of apparent suicide that the aliens couldn't understand or counter. But Bishop and his crew survived the impact, fighting their way through the alien ship's living corridors to reach the central consciousness that controlled the entire fleet. In the final confrontation, they discovered that the Harvester's greatest fear was chaos itself. The aliens had spent millions of years creating order and control throughout the galaxy. It couldn't comprehend a species that could function effectively, while embracing randomness and accepting terrible losses. When the Harvester mothership finally died, its death scream echoed through their bioneural network, causing the entire fleet to shut down. The surviving alien ships fled Earth's system, carrying word of a species unlike any they had ever encountered. In the aftermath of the victory, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. Millions of people returned from the evacuation, and the planet slowly came back to life. But humanity had been forever changed by the experience. Megan Clark stood before the United Nations, representing Earth as its new ambassador to the galactic community. Her speech was broadcast to every world where intelligent life existed. "We are a peaceful people," she said, her voice carrying across space to thousands of alien civilizations. "We want to be friends and neighbors with all species in the galaxy, but we want everyone to understand something important about humans." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We protect our own, and anyone who mistakes our kindness for weakness will discover why we keep soldiers sleeping in the ice, waiting for the day when peace is no longer possible." The galaxy listened, and the galaxy understood. Humanity had proven that even the most advanced predators could become prey when they threatened something humans cared about. Colonel Bishop and his awakened soldiers had fulfilled their purpose, but their war was finally over. They could rest knowing that humanity would never again be seen as easy prey by those who hunt in the darkness between stars.